The oldest werewolf tale doesn't begin in a forest, but in a palace in ancient Arcadia, Greece. King Lycaon was proud, cruel. He mocked the gods and dared to test them. They say Zeus, king of the gods, came down from Olympus disguised as a wandering traveler. He entered Lycaon's court to test his heart. But Lycaon saw through the disguise and laughed. "If this is truly Zeus," he said, "let's see if a god can stomach the taste of man." He ordered a child to be slaughtered. Some say it was a captive. Others say his own son. The flesh was cooked, seasoned, and laid out on silver platters. And it was served to Zeus. Zeus rose in silence. Then he spoke. "You have defiled the sacred laws of Xenia and spilled innocent blood in mockery of the divine." Thunder cracked. Lightning split the palace. Lycaon's body twisted and shattered. Bones snapped. His arms bent backward, teeth pushed through his jaw. Coarse gray hair tore through his skin. He dropped to all fours and howled. A wolf, not a noble beast, but a cursed one, exiled to the mountains, hunting in the dark, trapped forever between man and monster. From that day, the curse had a name: lycanthropy, from lykos, meaning wolf, and anthropos, meaning man. The first werewolf wasn't hunted, he was made. The myth of human transformation didn't disappear with the fall of Greece. As stories spread through Europe, the idea of the man-wolf reappeared, not as a punishment from the gods, but as a figure of fear in everyday life. In Western Europe, the werewolf became a symbol of sin and moral failure. Not a cursed king, but a man who had done something terribly wrong. In France, he was known as le loup-garou. In German lands, werewolf. Both names meant the same thing: man-wolf. These weren't noble beasts or tragic heroes. They were threats, dangerous, violent, and often beyond redemption. Legends told of men who vanished into the forest, returning days later with blood on their hands and no memory of what they'd done. In Scandinavia, things were different. Norse stories spoke of berserkers, warriors who entered battle in a trance-like state, believed to channel the spirit of wild animals. Some thought they weren't just fighting like beasts, but becoming them. This wasn't seen as a curse, but a weapon, a power drawn from within. Further east, the lines blurred even more. In Slavic traditions, in places like Romania, Serbia, and Russia, names like Varkolak or Volkodlak described a darker figure. Not always a man, not quite a ghost, and not entirely alive. Sometimes associated with werewolves, sometimes with demons, these creatures reflected older fears, not just of animals, but of the dead and the things that walked between worlds. Across Europe, details changed, but one idea remained: that a man could lose himself, that the boundary between human and beast was thin, and once crossed, it was rarely undone. In the late Middle Ages, fear wasn't just told in stories, it was put on trial. Across Europe, men, and sometimes women, were accused of turning into wolves and killing. In France, during the 15th and 16th centuries, villagers believed werewolves hunted the forests. When livestock vanished or children disappeared, someone had to be blamed. One of the most famous cases was Gilles Garnier, known as the Werewolf of Dole. In 1573, several children went missing near his village. Witnesses claimed they saw a wolf-like man attacking them. Garnier confessed, said he used a magical ointment that let him transform, said he fed on the flesh to survive. He was burned at the stake. Another, far more disturbing case occurred in Germany just a few years later. Peter Stump lived near Bedburg during a period of war, famine, and religious conflict. For years, locals reported attacks on livestock and people. Entire families vanished. Search parties found only remains. In 1589, Stump was arrested. Under torture, he confessed to making a pact with the devil and said he had received a belt that allowed him to become a wolf. He admitted to killing over a dozen people and to committing cannibalism. His execution was designed to be a warning. His body was displayed publicly. No trace of the wolf belt was ever found. These weren't isolated incidents. Over the span of 2 centuries, dozens of people were tried and executed for lycanthropy. The trials mirrored those of witchcraft, fueled by fear, superstition, and the need to explain horror. They show us something deeper, that in a world without answers, people often turn to monsters, even if they had to invent them. It wasn't just the beast that terrified them. It was the thought that the beast might live next door. In many modern stories, the werewolf and the Lycan seem similar. Both are humans who turn into wolves. But over time, the two ideas have taken different shapes. The werewolf comes from older folklore, a cursed man who transforms during the full moon, loses control, and becomes violent. He often wakes with no memory of what he's done. The Lycan, as seen in newer films and games, is stronger, faster, and more aware. He can transform at will. He stays in control. He uses the beast as a weapon, not as a punishment. This difference doesn't come from ancient myth. It was created by modern fiction. Movies like Underworld and games like The Witcher turn the Lycan into a separate kind of creature, more like a warrior than a monster. So while the words may sound alike, the stories they tell are not. Long before film gave them claws and fangs, werewolves lived in books. In the 12th century, the Norman writer Marie de France told the story of Bisclavret, a nobleman who turns into a wolf but remains loyal and kind. It's one of the first tales to suggest that the beast inside is not always evil. Writers like Gordy, the Brothers Grimm, and later Robert Louis Stevenson explored the blurred line between man and beast. The werewolf wasn't always a physical creature. Sometimes it was a metaphor. In these stories, the transformation represented deeper fears, uncontrollable anger, mental illness, or hidden urges. It wasn't just about becoming something else, but about revealing something already there. As literature moved into the modern era, the werewolf evolved again, not just a warning, but a reflection, a symbol of the struggle between instinct and restraint. For most people today, the werewolf doesn't come from a book, but from a screen. Film and television reshaped the legend, giving it sound, movement, and most of all, a look. In 1941, Universal Pictures released The Wolfman. It defined the modern werewolf, bitten by another, cursed by the full moon, and doomed to transform uncontrollably. Heavy brows, elongated limbs, and the famous mid-transformation sequence, done with makeup and slow fades. became iconic. As horror evolved, so did the werewolf. In the 1980s, films like An American Werewolf in London and The Howling raised the bar for practical effects. Bones snapped, skin stretched. Transformations were no longer implied. They were shown in painful, visceral detail. It wasn't just a monster anymore. It was body horror. Later, television brought new versions. Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Teen Wolf, Being Human. Here, the werewolf became more than a threat. He could be a friend, a protector, even a hero. Still cursed, but human underneath. And then came the shift. Franchises like Twilight and Underworld turned the werewolf into a soldier or a rival. Love interests, enemies, sometimes both. Across every screen, one idea remained. The werewolf is never just a monster. It's a symbol of transformation, power, fear, and survival. Vampires and werewolves, two of the most enduring monsters in myth and fiction, often shown at war. But it wasn't always like that. In early European folklore, their stories overlapped. In Slavic regions, names like Varkolak or Vukadlak sometimes referred to both a werewolf and a revenant, a creature that returned from the grave. The boundaries between the two were unclear. Sometimes they were the same thing. As myths spread and evolved, the creatures split. Vampires became cold, calculating, undead. Werewolves, wild, emotional, flesh-bound. One feeds on blood, the other tears it from the bone. In modern fiction, this contrast became conflict. Underworld turned it into a war. Van Helsing made it personal, and fans took sides. The vampire, immortal, refined, strategic. The werewolf, fast, raw, instinctual. Brains versus brawn, order versus chaos. In the modern world, the werewolf doesn't inspire fear like it once did. Cities grew, forests disappeared. The unknown became explainable. Science replaced superstition. Electric light replaced moonlight. And the stories lost their bite. Today, the werewolf lives mostly in entertainment, books, games, TV shows. Still popular, still recognizable, but no longer believed. The myth became a genre. The transformation, a metaphor. The monster safe behind a screen. In old villages, a howl in the night meant danger. Now, it's just sound design. It started with a king who defied the gods and paid the price. From that moment on, the fear of becoming something else, something wild, never left us. Across centuries and continents, the werewolf has changed its shape, but not its presence. So even though the werewolf has evolved into a simple story, a character in books and films, we never really know if the fear behind it is gone for good. Sometimes, late at night, in an empty street, when something moved just out of sight, the old feeling returns that maybe, just maybe, the beast is still out there, waiting.